This is Inside the Wolf's Den, an entrepreneurial journey with Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkel.
Welcome back to Inside the Wolf's Den with your hosts, Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkel. Today we've got a episode for you. We're actually going to dig deep into this NAR settlement, right? I think it's kind of been a hot topic the last couple weeks, and I've been getting a lot of investors and clients come to me and say, what do you think about that? You know, and some people think it's a big deal and some people don't. Yeah. So I think let's get into it.
Yeah, I was just, it's a funny thing. I was just at a plumbing, and they were asking me all about this. So even the plumbers.
Everywhere you go, it's, yeah.
Our question, just, they want to know what it's going to change, what's going to happen. We're a little, behind in getting this episode out to you, but, it's been, almost a month now that I think it came down. But if you're unaware, and we just thought, this is we have a lot of guests, we talk a lot about real estate, so we thought it would be just relevant to us just talking about it. What do we see changes and what's coming to the real estate market? So if you're unaware and you don't know what happened, the National Association of Realtors just settled a bunch of antitrust lawsuits to the tune of $418 million. The question is how they're going to pay that. That's one question. But as part of the settlement, a couple of big changes were implemented that will affect real estate agents on how they advertise commissions and how commissions will be agreed upon with their clients. You want to get into some of those? Like what are the changes that?
Yeah. So listing brokers cannot advertise compensation on the MLS. And commission arrangements between buyers and sellers and agents must be negotiated independently without including the fees in the listing price. So that's one. And then MLS participants, usually real estate agents, must establish written representation agreements with their clients as well.
The buyers.
Yeah, the buyers.
The buyer's payment to the agent before viewing the home. So if you're unaware before, typically it was very standard 6% commission when you listed your home for sale. And that 6% would be paid to the listing agent. And Correct. It was very customary that the buyer's agent that was representing the buyer was paid by the listing agent or comes from the commission that the listing client pays. So they pay 6% on the sale of their home. Out of that 6%, typically in most standard commission structures, it was 3% to the buyer's agent representing the buyer. Now that there's really no standard anymore, and they can't advertise that, and buyers agents aren't guaranteed the 3%.
Right.
So it's going to change some things. It's still, we're going to get into some things that we think might come. Now, it's really new. You haven't seen a lot of changes, and it may not see much changes at all, but I think there's going to be a few, especially with the buyer's agents.
Yeah,
I think is the biggest
one. So too. Yeah.
So the big thing that's going to happen, with this is, in my opinion, I think the biggest thing is it might weed out the market a little bit as far as like the real estate agents out there in the market.
And recently there's been you looked at the number of real estate agents out there, right? There's crazy amounts of agents out there. So yeah, I think that that's one thing that's going to happen is it's going to weed out some of the agents out there. Yeah,
I think it's going to, you have to be we were just talking about this before we jumped on this podcast, in a different industry, but we were talking the same concept. It's you got to be an expert in your craft, and you got to be. So what it's going to force agents, because most agents aren't good, in my opinion. But
geez, Shawn.
Yeah. Out of all the agents out there, there's the top, right? There is.
It's
that 80-20 rule,
in every
right?
industry, though. It doesn't matter if it's real estate, is plumbing. Yeah, you're right. Yes.
And so I think the people that are great at their craft, they're great at sales, they're great at negotiations, they're going to excel.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the ones that aren't, and you aren't a great salesperson, you aren't good at negotiation and negotiating your commission now, I think you're going to struggle. And so I think that's what's going to weed out a lot of people, or they're just not going to be willing to do it. And so, because if you're not a great negotiator, your client's probably going to negotiate your commission up front, and you're not going to get paid very much. Yes. And so it's not going to be worth your time. So I just think that's going to be the big change. So it's going to force you to be an expert in your craft and work on your craft and work on your sales approach, or else you're probably not going to survive. So
Good point.
Yeah, I think it's going to weed out a lot of people. I think the buyer's agent model is going to change significantly. I think, and we don't know yet exactly to the extent of what's going to be standard or what's going to be. I think there's going to be some creativity, which is going to be kind of cool. I think people are going to get creative on how they pay
that commission.
Yeah, how they pay buyer's agents. I think because traditionally, that it came out of that 6%. We'll say now, I wonder if the listing agent only lists it for 3% because that's what he negotiated with his client, and he is not going to pay anything to the buyer's agent. So what is the buyer agent going to do?
I mean, if the buyer really wants the house, then the buyer can ultimately pay the commission. I think you're going to see a lot of that, actually.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought with that is like, okay, well, what about first-time home buyers, like FHA first-time home buyers? They probably barely have enough money to scrape together just to buy the home. They're probably not going to have enough money to pay their agent as well, which I think will cause. So there's a couple of things that I think is going to happen. I think you're going to start seeing lenders. They're going to start negotiating the commission into the loan, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it's going to come out of the loan to pay for that proceeds, out of the buyer's loan to pay for that. I think you'll see contracts where they'll present the contract, but it'll say, yes, my client will pay XYZ for this home, but you also got to pay me a 3% commission because I represent the buyer. Right. And so you're still getting to the same 6% probably, but it's just going to be
the negotiation,
And they may say, no, for that price, I'll only pay you 2%. And then it's up to the agent. Hey, well, if they negotiate that or not. So I think you'll see some of that as well. So I think
it'll be interesting. Yeah. I'm actually excited to kind of see, where that goes. Cause I think you're right. There is going to be a lot of creativity. No more the customary standard.
Something else that I thought was that I think that could evolve is you see more of a transaction coordinator role. So I think you could see, buyer's agents become more transaction coordinators. So say, we live in a pretty high-tech world today. So like, for instance, like in leasing, we don't do a lot of agent showings or our staff going and showing to homes to lease. We do electronic lock boxes and the people register and see the home on their own. I think you can.
So for a fee, they can coordinate the
to go see it by themselves. Yeah. And a lot of times you have digital photos, you have walkthroughs that you can do digitally through your home. And so you might see buyer's agents just become meaning just help you with the contract portion of it.
Yep. So for a flat fee or something.
They
coordinate that.
Coordinate it and help you negotiate the contract and help you coordinate the inspections and appraisals and stuff like that. So I think you may see that. Something that I thought was that I thought would be cool that I think is going to happen, or I don't know if it's going to be cool or not, but or great. It's change, and so that's coming no matter what. And what's your thoughts on this? Is technology really playing a role into this? What's your opinion as far as like the Zillows? This opens up the whole door for them, correct? To now they can get involved more. It's not going to be dependent so much on say the Zillows of the world that are marketing these properties can get involved now in, maybe they can provide the agent transaction coordinators. I see where tech can get in the space now with lending, with
even the transaction coordinating side as well.
Correct. So I think you're going to see a lot more where your loan officer, or like say a Zillow, for example, they're marketing the properties. They're going to be able to offer loans and have whether it be a third party or in-house, but they offer loans, and in that loans is they'll transaction coordinate your contract. And so it's almost like a one-stop shop for everything. If you're a buyer, you're still going to need the listing agent and all that stuff. But I think that you might see the buyer representation go there as well.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on, if you're an agent, you're an expert, like what are some things that you can do to get ahead of this and stay in the game?
It's a great question. Well, because you're the broker, so I'll put you back. I'll spin the question back to you. What, in your opinion, where do you see that? As far as what can they do to? Number one is get educated, right?
Educated for sure. You find coach, mentor, somebody. Obviously, the market is always changing, so you really, really need to stay ahead of that and make sure that you are, you have a coach mentor and are always learning, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is sharpen your tool belt, right? You really, like you mentioned, be the expert in your field. So whether it's taking sales courses or being, whatever that may be, I think that's
correct.
Going the extra mile.
And we talk a lot about masterminding and all that. I think whether it be a small mastermind locally that you get some of the top agents together and you guys you talk about it, like, hey, what are you doing? What are you seeing? What are you negotiating? What different agreements are you putting together? And I think that you're going to see more of that. Like, I think that's how you stay on the cutting edge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I also think, which I don't think a lot of people focus on, is the customer experience, right? So the clients that you do have, like really, really cultivating those clients, getting referrals from others, because more than anything, you want people to, if you do good, people are going to pay, right? And so, and they're going to stick with you because they love you. So focusing on that customer experience, I think that's going to be crucial.
So to sum it up, to stay ahead and what you can do to really gain a competitive edge is education, coach mentorship, masterminding with other people. What was the other one?
And focusing on the customer experience.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. What is, as far as this lawsuit, and do you see one of the big things that I thought was interesting, and I've never been a big fan is the whole MLS setup. And I think one of the things that they mentioned in the lawsuit is that you no longer have to participate in the MLS if you are a member of,
which there's certain MLSs that, if you're if that property is listed on the MLS, like you can't make an offer on it. That's how it was before, right? Now you don't have to be a part of the MLS as long as you're an agent.
So I think that will open up again the tech companies, some of maybe the smaller brokerages, but it'll allow some changes to the current market space, and I think for the good.
Yeah,
I think competitive. It's going to make it. I think that if anything from this, when a big lawsuit like this comes down, it opens it up to being. It's like the AT&T when they broke part that and the monopoly. In a way, realtors and MLSs kind of had a monopoly, and I think now they're subject to they lost a lot of their power. So now I think it opens up to a lot more creativity and a lot more competitiveness, which for the consumer is always better, I think, in the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll see how agents weather through this and weather through that change, but I think it'll open up to I think in the end, it'll be better for the consumer.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
I think it will. We'll see do you think it's going to be a stricter enforcement on? I think there's going to be. You're going to have to watch how you make sure you're complying. You're not. Be careful with the commissions and how. I think you should document.
Yeah, and it's so new right now, I think. But yes, I think it's. We need to start thinking about that now, because I think in the next few months or so, yes, it's going to become a lot more stricter, and people are going to be looking at that.
Yeah, I think what you talk about in the property management space is documenting everything, right? So more formal agreements, and I think the big other thing from this settlement and the lawsuit was just transparency, right, between the buyers and agents. So just everything disclosed, right? And disclosure. Disclosure. Yep. But I think there's going to be a lot more formal agreements on the commissions and how everybody's getting paid in the transaction. That's going to be very detailed. So it's interesting what they're going to do to come up with the agreement.
Yeah.
Because if you're a traditional agent, the forms you use is usually the National Association of Realtor forms, right? Yep. So they're the ones that come up with all this. So we'll see what changes they're going to have on the forms. You're going to see a lot of changes.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. And like I said, some people don't think it's a big deal, right? But others, I think that you're gonna definitely see the changes, and there's going to be a lot more creativity. And so you need to start thinking about, okay, what could I do as an agent or as a brokerage? What can I do to stay ahead? Yeah,
and just staying. It's going to create competition, and I think just stay ahead of it and know what's coming. Now, I think for the consumer, I don't know if you'll see a whole lot of change other than the way things are structured, the way things are presented. So like we said before, it might not, you still might pay 6%, but instead of just negotiating 6% up front, you're going to end up having to negotiate in the contract and to pay the other buyer's agent and vice versa, right? So it's still, I don't know if it's going to, it's just the way, maybe the formalities and the way it's structured.
Yeah, but even from property managers, I think that's going to change a little bit as well, especially the ones that were so used to, you know, putting their fee structure on the MLS, right? I know in my New Mexico market, we don't do that. But in Texas, we're customary to put the fee structure in MLS.
And so that won't be on there. So you'll have everything.
And from what I'm hearing, I'm already hearing that property management companies out there are already reducing their leasing fees on MLS. So I think it's not just for the sales market, but also the leasing market as well. Yeah.
One of the things that a lot of the chatter that came out of this whole settlement on social and all that was that it's going to create a big drop in real estate prices. I don't know where people got that from. Like, I don't know what that is.
Again, it's all about who you listen to, right? People are just going to make up things, I think.
They thought that this is going to cause prices to fall, and I don't see that happening at all. And the big thing was they were going to say that the cost to buy and sell a house is going to drop significantly, like 30%. They're going to see, so meaning, in other words, like agents are going to get paid 30% less because they're negotiating everything. I don't know.
I mean, because if you're thinking about how many agents are being weeded out through that process, right? Yeah. Ultimately, it could.
It could lead to which would, again, was better for the consumer, and you're paying less to sell your home or to buy your home. Because in the end, too, it could save the buyers as well. Because if the seller's having to pay less of a commission to sell their home, they may be more inclined to negotiate and all that. And that's why I think where people are saying, hey, prices might fall because they're not having to pay as much. So that in order to sell it quickly, they can drop it.
It might actually open up some inventory.
We'll see. And who knows? I think we haven't seen it yet. And I don't see that happening really significantly or anything, but it might be a little bit cheaper to buy. I think it's going to, again, and all these policies and things that always come into play usually hurt the people that need it the most. And it seems like, that seems like it always happens in politics and stuff like that. But I think the first time home buyer is the one that I think gets affected because like they're the ones that are struggling just to be able to buy a home. And right now with the way prices and real estate, the interest rates are, it's already hard for them to buy anything.
Right.
And if you're gonna have to ask them to pay a commission or ask them to pay a transaction coordinating fee or ask them to pay anything on top of what they're already having, it may push a lot more of them out of the market.
Yeah, and it could. But also you think about, with the low inventory out there and people have to buy, it doesn't really give them much of a choice either, right? If they really want to be homeowners.
But if they can't afford it, if they can't afford it, then if you're asking them to pay a 3% commission on top of that, they're definitely not going to be able to afford it. And so it's either going to be negotiated into the loan, negotiated into the price, but you're probably pushing some of them out of the market and then I guess if you're less buyers, then I guess prices, but we still don't have enough inventory. So, right. There's a lot of speculation, but around
this is Shawn and Joni's perspective. So I would love to hear what some of you guys, your take on the NAR settlement and how this might change the market. So
yeah, and as far as like real estate investors, because that's a lot of our listeners. If you're not an agent, I don't know
investors
how much
are like,
yeah. And there was like, so half of our follower or half of our real estate feed or whatever is real estate investors. So we get a lot of like, they're chiming in, everybody's excited about it. I don't know if really anything's going to change for them. They may, I think what you could do if you were a real estate investor, they might open some opportunities on MLS where you could offer. So I know in the past when we used to buy heavily on MLS, we would always waive our commission, right? Or
absolutely.
We'd give the commission, we'd give the full commission to the listing agent. So say, hey, we're not going to take a commission, you keep it all, or hey, we're going to waive our commission and not take the 3%, but here's our price. And so I think that you as an investor might be able to create a competitive advantage by doing that, especially if other buyers are going to come with contracts saying, hey, I'll pay maybe a little bit more than this investor, but you got to pay me a 3% commission. Maybe you might be able to get the deal that way.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
And
there's some investors that say, you know what, I'm still paying my agent the same amount because they do such a fantastic job for me, right?
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, I saw a lot of that as well as investors were commenting that, hey, just pay the agents because they
do the work. They're the ones that are getting it done.
Yeah, and they're the ones that find it. And to me, it's like, why are you going to cut out? So the buyers are the most. It depends on the market and where we're at in the real estate cycle. Because like the problem is a lot of investors have not lived through a full down cycle. So like in 08 and 9 and 10 and all that, man, I would do anything for more buyers, right? And so like I'm not going to cut out. I'd actually pay buyers agents more,
right?
Just because like I want. If they have their choice of 3%, or if I'm paying them 3% plus a $500 bonus, I want more people to come to my property.
Exactly.
So I would probably pay buyers agents even more. Now, if it's real like we are now, low inventory, then maybe it's not as important. But that's something to think about too as we move through this. So I don't know if we offered you any help.
I thought it was great.
Yeah, I just think we at least talked about it. We at least gave you our 2 cents and just let you know that hey, change is going to come, and it's going to open up some things. You will see some changes. You will see some competitiveness. Yep. Hopefully, you'll see some weeding out of the agents in the market.
Yeah.
And
what are you going to do to stay ahead of the game?
And yeah, correct. So to me, it's like, hey, if you're an agent, I think network with other agents and you guys put together, and your brokerages should be doing that.
Building those relationships is going to be key.
And together, you guys come up with creative ideas on how can we get the competitive advantage against our clients? How can we be more competitive in the way we structure our fees and all that? So
how can you be different?
Yeah, it makes a difference. And so there'll be some people that I think will lead the way in this, and there'll probably see some education companies that will lead the way in educating, hey, here's how we attack it.
There'll be a few.
Yeah. And I think some of the tech out there are going to lead the way in these changes and come up with some creative solutions to the market. So stay tuned for that. And we appreciate all of you, and we'll see you all next week.
See you, everyone.
You've been listening to Inside the Wolf's Den, an entrepreneurial journey with Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkel. Tons of entrepreneurial podcasts are out there. Talking. But Joni and Shawn are living it every single day. Their portfolio now includes many franchises and medium-sized businesses. We talk about the trials and motivators of successfully running a business. Join us again soon for another podcast. But until then, reach out on the website at InsideTheWolfsDen.com, on Facebook at Inside the Wolf's Den, on Instagram at Inside the Wolf Den. We'll see you again soon. This is Inside the Wolf's Den. We'll see you next time.